Hello, this presentation is brought to you by the CCHS Wellness Team. Their contact information is at the end of this presentation, and feel free to email them with any questions you may have after the presentation. Let's get started. So my name is Paredes, and I will be talking about the neuroscience of wellness today. We're going to talk about how to train your brain to improve mood through movement, breathing, and nourishment. The agenda, we're going to talk about why the brain, we're going to talk about our nervous system, and then jump right into movement, breathing, and nourishment. So an introduction about who I am. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. My background is actually in neuroscience, and that's why we are going to be talking about the intersection of neuroscience and wellness with our bodies. Great ways to manage stress and anxiety in the workplace and in our personal lives is through understanding the brain and understanding ways we can trick it back into wellness. So why our brain, right? So we have to look at the building blocks of what makes us happy, what makes us feel well, and that would be our brain parts and our neurotransmitters, which we will get to in just a moment. So different brain parts, just for a basis of understanding. We have our reptilian brain, which is really our very basic evolutionary sort of building block for functioning. So we have heart rate and breathing. We have our sensory router, so that tells us sort of where to put that information in our brain. We have this next layer, which is our limbic system, and that's where we have our amygdala and hypothalamus, and that is where we process emotion, and we also have our pituitary gland in there, and that's where we have hormone secretion. And that's important because one of the hormones that's secreted when we are stressed is cortisol. You've probably heard that before, that term, but cortisol is responsible for heightening our arousal, heightening our awareness. It also increases weight gain. It also does all kinds of uncomfortable things to the body when we're stressed, especially with chronic stress over time. So we really want to work on minimizing cortisol levels in our body for wellness. We're also going to talk about the neocortex, which is the outermost layer. So when you look at a brain or you see images of a brain, what you're actually looking at is the neocortex. So we have our different lobes in our cortex. So we have our frontal cortex, which is responsible for judgment, decision making, inhibition, all of that fun stuff, and our parietal lobe, sort of right in the middle, sensory input and processing. In the back, which we're not going to discuss, we have our occipital lobe, which is for vision, and we have our temporal lobe, which is functioning as sort of our audio center. But for today, we're going to be focusing on frontal lobe, judgment, decision making, and our sensory input in our parietal lobe. Neurotransmitters are the chemical messengers that really tell our brain and body how to feel. So when we are stressed, we have a stimulus, say maybe you got some bad news, or maybe you're stressed about work. Our body sends a signal up to our brain and it says, there's some stress, right? And so then what ends up happening is all of the circuitry, all of the brain parts work together, and neurotransmitters are actually sent off to communicate the release of these different messages. So when we go running, for example, I know it's an interesting segue, but hear me out. So when we go running or we have endurance sports, typically there's a little bit of a runner's high, and that is really a boost of endorphins. When we are in a stressful situation, boost of endorphins. When you hurt yourself, boost of endorphins, right? So endorphins really act as pain relief, painkillers. We also refer to it as the feel-good chemical because it sort of mitigates the pain and tricks us into thinking that we're okay temporarily. We also have dopamine, which is really responsible for pleasure and reward. So when we have ice cream and when we have pleasurable activities in our lives, that tricks our brain or tells our brain, like, this is really fun, this is really nice, I like this, and we feel good. So it's also involved with learning, movement, which we'll get to, and attention. So when we have normal or healthy levels of dopamine, we typically are able to pay attention, we're able to learn actively, and we're able to feel satisfied and happy with that. Serotonin is our happy neurotransmitter. So when you see commercials for depression medication, or when people are talking about depression or you're feeling depressed mood, serotonin is probably responsible for that. So it really is the happy or sad neurotransmitter. It's also responsible for sleep, hunger, and emotion, right? So our emotional variability. I mentioned hunger because if you've ever heard the term hangry, which is not a formal technical term, but hungry and angry, typically low levels of serotonin cause that sensation or that feeling of being hangry, being hungry and upset. So it ties into hunger and our mood in that way. So just a quick quote, our nervous system, the great thing then in all education is to make our nervous system our ally instead of our enemy. So this could not be more true. We really want to be able to trick our body back into being our ally and really being on our side to balance our levels of wellness. We have sympathetic nervous system and a parasympathetic nervous system. So our sympathetic nervous system is responsible for fight or flight. It's really what's activated when we're responding to a stressful situation. And so that's just really for reference, because what I would like to focus on is our parasympathetic nervous system. It's our calming nervous system. So we slow our breath, we are able to digest our food, our heart rate slows, and our pupils constrict, which tells our body we're not in danger. There are different ways to activate our parasympathetic nervous system. Movement increases serotonin and dopamine and decreases cortisol and adrenaline. Breathing activates our calming nerve and it calms the fight or flight. And nourishment, we have to make sure that we are giving our brain and our body proper nourishment in order to increase our levels of wellness. Movement, really quickly, dancing, running, walking, tapping. So I wanted to mention a butterfly tap, if you can see. Just tapping bilaterally is called a butterfly hug. And if you want to try it for about 30 seconds, it can be extremely helpful to calm the system down. Breathing, belly breathing, it does all kinds of benefits. Diaphragmatic breathing allows our lungs to open all the way. And so I wanted to try the 4-6-8 breath very quickly. So you inhale for 4, hold for 6, and exhale for 8. So let's try it. Ready? Inhale for 4. Holding for 6, and exhale for 8. Even doing it once really resets your vagal nerve. It tricks your body into saying, hey, I need to slow down. Nourishment, obviously eating healthy, but what does that mean? So magnesium-rich foods, leafy greens, nuts, cashew butter, avocados, chickpeas, and really that is across the board. Those are superfoods. So serotonin boosting foods for happiness, poultry, dairy, leafy greens, and dopamine boosting foods for pleasure and wellness in that sense. Same deal. Fruits, avocados, chocolate and coffee are secretly hidden under my face there. And so really a balanced diet, the 4-6-8 breath, and any type of movement really increases our levels of dopamine, serotonin, activates our parasympathetic nervous system, and calms all the stressful systems down. Hopefully that's helpful to you. And if you have any questions at all or need additional information, here is the contact information for the Contra Costa Health Services Wellness Team, and it was my pleasure to bring this presentation to you today.